Man, this sucks. Alright guys, today is Tuesday the 9th, May 2023. Alright, I come up with a new plan here. This is actually just creating a huge mess with this being a V8 position radiator, and I'm putting it in the 6-cylinder position. So, what I've decided to do is I'm going to go to Tractor Supply and just kind of look and see what they got and see how much the price difference is between steel and aluminum. I'm going to get a long piece of angle iron or angle aluminum, and what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to cut this flange off right here. So I'm just going to cut that. I'm going to leave this part here, but I'm going to remove this part, and then with the angle that I'm going to get, I can drill 3 holes in this flat part, and I can actually bolt on some angle iron, which this is too big, but it gives you the idea. I can do some angle iron like that, or a piece of angle, whether it be aluminum or steel, and basically bolt it on to this flange here. So at that point, if I got it to where it's right even right here going down, it'll mount in the factory holes in the core support. And I won't have all this goofiness that I was trying to figure out a way to cover up and hide and box in and all that kind of crap. So I will basically go in, cut my little tabs back off, and smooth this face side up, and then I just have the factory mounting. So that's what I'm going to do instead of having all this stuff. It'll look a little bit better, and then I don't have to worry about going in and boxing everything in and building a picture frame. Basically is what I was going to do. I was going to picture frame all this in and have a piece that bolted on that looked really, really slick, but I'm not going to mess with it. So for one thing, I don't have the gauge steel I need in a big enough piece, so I'm just going to do it that way. So here's an idea that I had in my head for a little bit. This is an original voltage regulator for the car, and it says Delco Remy, made in USA, and it's basically a little cover on this. What I thought my original idea for this was I was going to use just the lid, take these 2 screws out, use just the lid, and I was going to build a base that matches that, and then cut out a gasket, like a foam gasket that would go under it, so it would be waterproof. And I was actually going to mount this somewhere in the car, like on the inner fender, you know, somewhere, but just the cover, not the main bottom piece, but just the cover, as it says Delco Remy on it. And that was going to hide a new ignition module for the H.E.I. So I'd have a spare on hand. So, you know, if it popped a module on me on the side of the road, I could take this off and get to my module. Again, just an idea. Alright, so all I did basically was turned it upside down and went in there with a grinder and got rid of all this rivet style stuff, and then just hammered it all out of there, knocked it all out. So now this is open, or free, you know what I mean? Nothing in there. So what I think I'm gonna do, I'm gonna mount it on the driver's side inner fender, because all the air conditioning and heater hoses and all that crap's gonna be over there. There's really nothing over here on this inner fender other than the wiring harness coming across here, and it's not that big around. So I'm gonna have a windshield washer jar up here at the front. Probably gonna put the universal electric square washer pump right here in this area. So I don't want to put it right here because it's all a big clutter of crap, so I kind of thought about putting it back here on the flat part there. So I put my hood hinge on without the spring. That way when the hood's down, this kind of simulates where all this location of this stuff is going to be, because I was worried it might hit that, but I've got plenty of room. So what I think I'm going to do, these fenders taper, you know, they're wide up here and then they get skinnier at the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this really, really close along this edge right here. This whole side I'm going to cut really thin, and then I'm going to wedge cut it so it'll get pretty much the thickness back there, and I'll have to weld all this stuff up, but I want to make that straight right there. So pretty much it'll be sitting in there kind of like that. and then I'll go in and weld it all the way around with tack welds, and then I'll take my cone burr bit on the die grinder and just go around and bevel those welds, and then after it gets that rust defender spray polyester on there, it'll look pretty much like it's molded in. And that's kind of what I want. I want this to look like it's cast in or pressed into that inner fender. And then I'll have a cover that screws off and on. So what I think I'm going to do, because this just had coarse thread, I think, coarse thread screws in it, I think I'm going to try to, that's pretty thick stuff. I think I'll just drill it and tap it for a 1032 and use a stainless steel Allen button on it. I think it'll be pretty sweet. Alright, so with the gear still turning in my head, this is a used module for an H.E.I. and this is a used coil for an H.E.I., which is the two main things that will stick you on the side of the road if you're away from home. And either job is about 10 minutes, if that, to change out on the car, so I don't have to pay for a tow bill. I'll just fix my car on the side of the road, which I've done before. So I knew the module would fit in there for sure, but I really would like to carry the coil and the module together. So this is going to end up working out, I think, pretty well. So my idea is, since that goes in there all the way, I know it'll come out of there or come through there, and this will fit with it. So that this needs to be taller. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to build another box out of steel and weld it all up, and I'm going to weld it to the back side of the inner fender. So it doesn't need to be very big, you know what I mean? But anyway, I'll cut out a square and I will box that in. That box will probably be this wide up in there. I don't have any clearance issue with the tire up in there. This car is going to be stock height anyway. But anyway, so I'll weld up a box in there first. So it's like a pocket up in there. It's basically a glove box almost without a lid on it, is what I'm trying to get you to picture. So at that point, that part can go on here. So when you unscrew the two screws off the lid, you've got, I don't know, like a little compartment in the back of a motorcycle, you know what I mean? It's like a engine compartment box, glove box, or toolbox, I guess. But I'll be able to put a module and a coil in there. And I've got a lot of upholstery remnants in there. I've got a whole bunch of different thicknesses of foam. So I'll basically foam line the box in there. That way this stuff won't rattle around in there. I want it to, like when I probably, you know, put foam all in the box in the inner fender, and then I'll spray glue a big thick piece of foam on this, and then that way I'll get it to where it, like it, I have to kind of push on it just a little bit to be able to get the screws started, and then that way it'll tension set all that in foam where it won't rattle around on there. I think that's a pretty cool idea. Instead of just putting a module in there, it'll have both. That is pretty cool, man. There's just less space taken up in that little toolbox, and I'm going to be carrying that little makeup box. I'm just doing it because it's custom and I can, you know what I mean? I just think it'd be neat to have a Delco Remy box on the inner fender, and I don't know how many people would actually look at that and think, hey, there's no wires on that. They're not going to think anything of it, you know what I mean? It'll look like it's supposed to be there. Plus, it's something I enjoy doing. To me, this is fun, it's challenging, and I enjoy fabricating and making things, especially stuff that's not going to cost me anything, you know what I mean? So, I'm going to get after it. Alright, I'm going to wedge cut this bracket here. Alright, so I got the back plate wedge cut, and I cleaned off the metal on the inner fender right here, and then I drew out a measurement line from the top of the fender to here so it would be even. anyway, it'll be about like that. Well, I haven't welded anything. All I did was take a self-drilling screw and screw the base directly to the inner fender. And I've got it just a little loose so I can still, I mean it's snug, but I can still move it. So right now I'm trying to figure out how to make this level, because the fender is curved. So I basically measured from here to here and here to here and drew a straight line, and I had it up there to it, but it doesn't look right. So what I ended up doing, I don't have the final ride height on the car, and I'm not going to until the car's done. This thing, if anything, sets up in the back really high because there's no weight on the car. This engine, it doesn't have any rotating assembly in it, no cast iron heads or nothing on it, so it's going to come down at all four corners. I just don't know how much. Now this is, I want this thing stock height, but I wouldn't mind if it was down in the rear just a little bit, because that's kind of the way I remember the old cars being, the stock height cars, you know. So, without having anything to get a straight line measurement off of, I put my angle finder on the frame rail right back here on the bottom of it, and I just matched that degree to the top of the Delco Remy box there across here, and it actually brought it down just a little bit. But I mean, standing here it looks okay. It's not zero. I mean, it's got a little bit in it, but I think that might be all right actually. All right, so I got out a piece of scrap that was laying over there in my bin. So I've got out my grid here, I guess you'd call it, for the box. That's how thick it's going to be. So I'm going to cut this out, and I'm going to make an attempt at breaking them all in my brake, which I'm pretty sure it's not going to happen, but I think I might be able to get it kind of close and then finish it off by hand, like get the brake started where it's not quite a 90, like 45 them all, and then finish it out by hand possibly. I'm going to try that first. If not, I'm going to cut where there's a short and a long in each one, and then I'll break that into a 90, those two, and then I'll weld the two sides together to make a square. And then I'll just use this up here, or possibly this piece here, whatever I need for a cap on the end. I could use the piece I cut out of the inner fender, which is probably the best option. That way I don't waste any of my scrap stuff here, but we'll see how it goes. Alright, so see if I can get this more into a box here. I'll try these. That's pretty much all I got. But with it started like that, then I'll finish it off with a hammer and dolly. Little squaring up because it's everywhere I've been it with those, it's kind of rounded it. So I'll stick my dolly into there and hit it with a hammer, and I'll get everything squared up. So now I only got to weld one point. So I'll stitch weld that together, and then I'll try to get it all squared up because it is kind of crooked a little bit, but I'll get it squared, and then I'll lay it down face down on that sheet metal, and I'll draw it out. Then I'll cut that piece off, and then I'll stitch weld that on, and I'll have a little box. So then I'll weld that to the back side of the inner fender, and that's just that deep of a pocket in there for that coil and module to go in there, and it's a little tube of grease that I have. That'll work. Well, there's many ways to do this stuff, but when you're limited on your tools, and just kind of use what you got. That's square enough. That was not bad. I need to finish welding it. I guess I can do that when I get the cap cut and put on. Alright, I just looked at my clock and it's 5:05, so my wife will be here in about 10 minutes. So I had to hurriedly clean up my mess, blow off the driveway, and I just kind of stacked everything right here. Alright, I'll fully weld it, and then when I go back and grind it, it should look pretty decent. So these corners have a little bit of roundness to them. This one's more straight because that's where I put it together, but when I'm tacking it all in, when I go back and round it, it should match. Not that it matters, it's going to be behind the fender, but anyway, that'll be behind that basically like that. So it's a little pocket, and the coil should fit up in there. Of course, I don't have that piece cut out yet, but oh yeah. And I'll wrap this in some foam or bubble wrap or something, and then stick it in there, keep it from rattling and stuff. Thanks for watching, guys.